disease, but most patients still have some virus in their system, right? I think if we could get to that with cancer, turn it into a chronic disease that we could control with therapies, we would have come a very, very long way. So when Vice President Biden talks about a moonshot, yes, we need to devote and dedicate more resources to cancer. But I think we need to do it like we did it for HIV/AIDS, which is to work from the bottom up. Start with fundamental research, then translate that research into new therapeutics for our patients.
And the tools we did have couldn't differentiate between the cancer cells that we wanted to hit hard and those healthy cells that we wanted to preserve.
Color is absolutely nothing to be afraid of.
Living without color is like living without love. It evokes so many emotions.
Yellow makes everyone happy.
There are many things you can do to make a small space feel larger. For example, having pieces that are up on legs or a coffee table that maybe has glass.
High gloss paint can really expand the space because you have
reflectiveness and dimension.
Our threat focus, our stress response is permanently dialed up. Resilient people don't diminish the negative, but they also have worked out a way of tuning into the good.
You can see, just looking loosely over the whole area, you'll see lots of areas of discrete, dark paint that doesn't fit in with the rest of the work. And that is retouching from a restoration undertaken probably around 100 years ago when the picture was owned by a man called Roger Fry.
Please stay standing and keep your hand up there. If you've ever lived through a natural disaster, been bullied or been made redundant, stand on up. If you've ever had a miscarriage, if you've ever had an abortion or struggled through infertility, please stand up. Finally, if you or anyone you love has had to cope with mental illness, dementia, some form of physical impairment, or cope with suicide, please stand up. Look around you. Adversity doesn't discriminate.
I'd say, too, one of the other things that we find students coming into the classroom with a presumption of, and is very much a presumption, I think, in our wider culture, is that the project of science is in some ways antithetical to religion, right? In that it's going to displace religion in some ways, that the two are going to be consistently at odds. And actually, right, the more of these texts you read, the more you realize that that is actually very rarely the case, right? That's the exception rather than the rule in this.
Let's talk about the trackpad, which, as usual, is best in class. I have used so many trackpads over the year, and every time I go to a computer shop, I try out trackpads. And there's just nothing that is as nice as one of these trackpads. These haven't really changed a lot, apart from adding Force Touch and like haptic feedback. They haven't really changed a lot since like 2012, 2011, which is good because it's a perfect trackpad. I can't imagine a trackpad being better than these ones. I really sound like an Apple fanboy in this review, but these laptops are amazing, and they've just made them even more amazing with the M1 chip, and it costs exactly the same, which is just next level. Moving on to the display, it is exactly the same as it's been recently. It's a high definition, high resolution Retina display, 2560 by 1600 pixels, and it has 400 nits of brightness. There
should be no ignition sources or open flames in the area. Wipe up any fuel with rags, and then lay them outside to dry so the fuel can evaporate. Once dry, place them in a sealed container and dispose of them properly.
Wrangler made these Western shirts that the fabric is so amazing that you can spot it virtually from a mile away. The shade of blue, the hue of the blue is so distinct, and the characteristic of the fabric is so distinct. You fall in love with these shades of blue, and you don't really know why.
Way, right? To literally engage the attention of all these body minds and present with them an alternative universe. To make people, to bring them into your world, to suck them into your trance, right? And literally engage them to probe the adjacent possible, right? To gnaw at that shadow future that hovers over the present, that provides a map of all the ways the present can reinvent itself. That's what leaders do. They distort reality. But here's the thing, there's nothing fake, there's nothing inauthentic about distorting reality, because the distorted reality becomes real the moment that perception becomes the main operating system. The moment you adopt that vision as truth, it becomes truth. Mankind decided we will fly, it became truth. Mankind creates technology that folds space and time so that minds can communicate instantaneously across digital screens. Somebody hallucinated this technology into being. We live in a world where our thoughts spill over, and if they can harness the will of the people around us, we can labor new realities into being. Where our thoughts spill over, and if they can harness the will of the people around us, we can labor new realities into being. We can usher new worlds into being. We can author realities, because we as human beings, our greatest potential is that we have this reality distortion field. We are like Neo in the Matrix when he sees the code and he flexes his muscle and space and time warps around him. Powerful metaphor, but that's who we are. That's who we are. That's what we are.
In fact, they don't correlate very much with IQ at all. They're about how you feel. So there's a quote that I keep coming back to by Saint-Exupéry. He's the author of The Little Prince. And he said, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up your men to collect wood and give orders and distribute the work. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea.
But perhaps his astounding attention to detail is shown nowhere better than in his masterpiece, The Marsh Birds of the Upper Nile River Diorama, which he constructed in 1953. By then, Carl had demonstrated vast capabilities in both his taxidermy of diverse animal groups, as well as his mold-making and crafting abilities.
I consider it my life's mission to convey the urgency of climate change through my work. I've traveled north to the Arctic to capture the unfolding story of polar melt, and south to the equator to document the subsequent rising seas.
I think that's a great way to go. A lot of folks buy their own domain name and they build a website, even if it's a one-page website that just kind of has a bio.
One study estimated that up to 20% of the population may possess this disorder, making it one of the most prevalent personality disorders, and it is known to be linked with domestic abuse.
Number 4, you find yourself feeling guilty often. If you find yourself feeling guilty all the time, I encourage you to watch a past video we did so that guilt doesn't dominate your life. But I will say, feeling guilty is tied with attachment to self. What?
And they are endowed with certain unalienable rights.
Jefferson got the language he used from Virginia's Declaration of Rights from the first draft written by George Mason. But he took George Mason's language and made it much more poetic and powerful.